All right, what is going on, everybody? Today's episode of What the Sheet, I'm going to be making a kind of a small organizer for my wife for work. So she's been, I mentioned in the past that she's a server at a restaurant here in town, and she kind of picked up this extra thing to kind of help keep her busy at home and make a little extra cash because of the pandemic and everything. So she gets paid to put these gift cards together for the company she works for. They have a few restaurants around the cities, and so she wants a little organizer so she can have the little gift card carrier, which is like these guys. This is how they get printed, and she has them like this. And then when she fills them out, she puts the price of the gift card, and then she folds them up, and then she has them in bunches. So like this group is 125, and she's got 4 different amounts. So there's 25, 50, 75, and 125. So she wants a divider for each different price, and then there's 4 different restaurants that she's making gift cards for. So then she needs 4 of those. So that's 16. And then she also wants a divider that can hold the unused or not used yet gift card holders. So I'll make 2 of those to go on top. And then I'm also going to add a slot for these envelopes that they're getting mailed out into. So in all, I'll probably have 16 cubbies for the gift cards that are completed, and then another 2 for the unused or not used yet card holders, and then 2 more cubbies for envelopes. So we're looking at 20 slots. And the way I'm going to make that is I'm going to use this 1/2-inch plywood and then some 1/4-inch plywood. I think it's 1/4-inch or 1/8-inch plywood, whatever it is. And the 1/2-inch plywood is going to be my trim piece, so that'll kind of make the general shape of the box. And then this 1/8-inch or 1/4-inch plywood will be the backer board, and then the little dividers on the inside. So when I'm making my dividers, what I'll do is I'll cut these into strips, and then to kind of get them to interlock, I'll kind of however wide I determine the strips to be, probably about 3 inches or so. I'll take and I'll come up about halfway on the strips every probably 4 inches or so, just so I can have enough space for the completed gift card to sit in a cubby. So if we turn this, so if we pretend that this is the side of the box, the gift cards will sit like this. We want to make sure that the dividers are wide enough to where they're not super tight, so she's not having to fight to get them out, but not super loose to where that they're they could go in kind of cattywampus and get stuck and wasting too much space. So we want them to be maybe like 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch wider than the gift cards themselves, because once they're in the cubby, they won't be rubber banded like this, and that way she can easily grab them out. So in order to get those 4 wide dividers, I'll have them slot here on both ends, and then I'll be able to kind of interlay the 2 strips together. So I'll have a vertical strip and a strip going across, and we'll be able to lock them together, and that way I don't have to cut a whole bunch of small pieces and then glue them together and wait for it to dry. I can cut all my strips down and then go back on the table saw, rip a little piece of it off to get that channel, and then they'll interlock, and then I'll be done. And then I'll do the same thing for the side paneling. Once I get the sides created, I'll go and I'll cut a dado or a rabbet on the table saw around the edge, on the inside edge of this, and that will let the bottom paneling, which will probably end up being this piece, sit flush with the back side. And then I have I have a strip of this plywood hanging against the wall there, and then I'll probably use that for the individual spacers and dividers inside the little crate itself. And then we'll probably end up either go buy some some cheap hardware handles for her, just so she can carry around to and from work if she needs to, or if she thinks it's okay, we'll probably just leave it as is, or I'll just cut a handle on the side once it's all made. That way she's got something to kind of easily pick this up, because once it's made, this will end up being a pretty wide piece, because each one of these is like 4 inches wide. So if I have 4 wide like this, that's 16, and then, you know, 5 or 6 deep with the actual cubbies going this way. It's going to end up being a pretty good sized little crate for her to carry stuff around in. But I'm going to get my dimensions and my design kind of laid out on my legal pad here, and that way I can get a rough idea of what I need to cut from this, because this is just going to be strips of the 1/2 inch, and then it'll make a box. So I won't use much of this, but I might have to source some other material for the backer board. And yeah, but I'll get back to you once I have my design laid out and drawn up on my legal pad, and I'll kind of show you what my plan of action is for that. All right, so sat here for a little bit, kind of went over my designing process here. Usually I do this on the computer, but since this is just a one-off project, I don't plan on having to make a bunch of these in the future, so I just decided to do it on the legal pad. But so I went through and kind of laid out my general sizes of bins or cubbies. So I got gift card cubby at 4 1/4 by 1 1/4, and I need 16 of those, 4 for each restaurant, and then 4 restaurants, so it gives me 16. And then I decided to do just 2 larger cubbies on top, just because I'll have one that'll be probably just mainly used for the empty card holders, and then one for the envelopes. I don't think she's gonna need 4 cubbies on the top. It might be a little excessive. If anything, I could always just make her a different crate later. Anyways, and then the back panel, I just put the dimension on that, so it's 17 1/4 by 8 1/2, and then the overall height is going to be 4 1/2 inches of the finished cubby, so that's not including that back panel. So the side piece will have to be an extra 1/4 inch, so it'll be 4 3/4 the strips that I'll make on the sides here. So then going down to the actual drawing here, let me see if I can clean that up a little bit. So the design, as you kind of see here, we have our 2 large cubbies up here. I just put the dimensions in there, so that helped me when I was getting the overall dimensions of the sides and the width, so I can add that together. So we have the 2 big cubbies. One will hold envelopes, one will hold the card holders that aren't being used yet, and those are 2 inches wide. And then it's going to be basically 2 of the smaller cubbies plus that 1/4 inch for the divider, so that gives me that 8 3/4. And then I just picked 2 inches, which is just a random number, which I figured would be plenty to hold basically a full box of these envelopes, and maybe some extra, and then a good handful of the card holders. And then the individual cubbies, they are 4 1/4, which is a 1/4 inch wider than the card holders when they're like this. So these are 4 inches wide this way. So I put an extra 1/4 inch, that way they got a little bit of play. And then I just did an 1 1/4 this way. So that way when they're stacked up like so, she could put, a couple dozen in each cubby as kind of like a back stock almost. So that way she can, when she has to put these together, she's not having to constantly make new ones. And so there's 16 of those. And then what I did to get the length on the side here is I added the 2 inches up here plus 1 1/4 times 4, which is 1 1/4 plus 1 1/4, that's 2 1/2 times 2, that's 5 inches. So that gives me 7. And then each one of these dividers is a 1/4 inch. So there's 4 dividers, so that makes another inch. So that gives me 8 inches. And then the trim piece, or the plywood that's going on the side, is 1/2 inch. So 2 strips of that gives me 1 inch. So that gives me an overall width or length, or whatever you want to consider this, of 9 inches. And then it was basically the same process for down here. It was just 8 3/4 times 2, that's 16 1/2, plus a 1/4, that's 17 3/4, and then add another inch, so it gives me 17 3/4 for the overall width. And then, like I said, the height the overall height on the outside is going to be 4 3/4 because I have the height of the inside the cup is be 4.5, because these envelopes, which are the tallest things that are going in here, are 4 3/8. So I want to make sure that everything is sitting below the surface. That way, when my wife is going to pick the gift cards up, because she has to go to each individual restaurant, she can have this sitting in her passenger seat. And then, if she's got to go inside or she's got to go somewhere else, she can set something on top of the box and not worry about bending the envelopes or, these cards or anything like that. Everything will be below the surface. And that'll help also when she's going to the restaurants to drop them or bring them into work, and she needs to carry something else, and she can set something else on top of this bin, and it'll make it easier for her to carry around. Because as you can see, it's not small, but it's not overly huge either. So I mean, it's only basically 18 inches wide by 9 inches long, and it's not going to be very deep. It's only going to be about that deep. So it's not the biggest thing on the planet, but it's still going to be big enough to where when she's carrying it, she's going to need 2 hands. And so if she has to carry anything else, it'll be nice that she could set something on top. So now that I got kind of my overall dimensions done, what I'm going to do is I'll rip out my 4 sides out of this 1/2 inch plywood here. And this plywood will end up being the vertical dividers going this way, just because it's not long enough to do the cross dividers. So that's what this will end up being, is just these 3 strips here. And then I have another sheet of this 1/4 inch plywood behind me that I'll use for the backer board and the long dividers going this way. So I'll get the table saw set up, and I'll set you guys up, and you can watch me cut all my strips down, and then I'm going to miter the corners on this to get the mitered edge. That way it'll give it a little bit cleaner edge on the frame. And then once everything's put together, I'll go through and I'll sand everything down so there's not rough corners and everything like that. So I'll set you up for a quick time lapse, and I'll catch you when we're done. All right, so I'm going to kind of show you how I've been cutting the grooves here. As you can see, I'm just using my Milwaukee cordless table saw, and I'll do a quick review of that later this week. I mean, it's a good saw, but we're not here to talk about the saw. So, as you can see, I don't have what they would call a dado stack in here. I just have a single blade, and the blade is, I think it's like 1/8 of an inch wide, roughly, a little bit less than that. And so I need to do basically like 2.5 passes through, and adjust over just a touch, basically a blade width every time. So as here, I'll kind of go like this with you guys. So as I'm coming through with the blade, I'll do 1 pass, and then move over a little bit, do another pass, move over a little bit, do another pass. And it ends up taking about 2.5, 3 passes to get a full width, so I can fit our divider pieces in. And I don't want them to be super snug, but I don't want them to be super loose either. So like right here, this is perfect. And I've done this enough with this saw and with this thickness of material that I know how far I need to adjust it each time. And the other thing you want to look out for when you're doing this is, I think, you can kind of see it on the edge here. So on the edge, when I was doing this rabbit cut on the backside, I did the same method. You can kind of see a little bit of a groove, a ridge, where the blades, these saw blades, they're angled. So one side's like this, the other side's like this. And what happens is you kind of end up having like a center line where the blades aren't cutting, because excuse me, because like I said, you have one side of the blade, one blade's like this, one tooth, I should say. So one tooth like this, one tooth like that. So you end up having like this kind of middle piece that's missing. And with this, it's not that big of a deal because it's going to be a loose fit. You know, the divider's just going to slide in, and that's it. For something that's going to be more kind of, I don't know how to really say it, but like a more fine finish. Like if you're wanting like something like this exposed, so you can kind of see here there's some chunks that are still there from where the teeth didn't quite grab or cut. You can get a different blade for the saw that's flat, so it'll be a flat tooth blade. So all the blades are flat like this, so it cuts. It'll leave a smooth cut, but the only issue is it takes more power to cut. So on a cordless saw like this, probably won't be that big of a deal cutting through 1/4 inch material, which is what I'm usually doing, or taking small bites. But on a bigger table saw, like a 10-inch, like regular worksite saw or a cabinet saw, like the one that's behind my lawnmower there, it's not that big of a deal because it's corded, and so you don't have to worry about that extra power coming out of the saw. And like I said, so I just have this one last cut. So what I've been doing is, since this is the long side, the width is 4 1/4 per cubby, so that's 4 1/4 here, and then I had to account for this bevel here. And since I can't get my tape measure to stick on this bevel edge, but I know I cut this at a 45, so if it's a 45 and this is a 1/2 inch plywood, that means the distance from here to here is about a 1/2 inch. I mean, the plywood's a little bit less, but you can just count it as 1/2 inch. So if I know I need 4 1/4 here, I can add that 1/2 inch, that's 4 3/4, and that gets me where this needs to be. So when I set up my saw, I just come over here, go to 4 3/4, and then that gets me that inside cut here, and then I just adjust over. And then once I get this channel cut, I go measure another 4 1/4, do these 3, and then I just measure 4 1/4, and that's this guy here. And then when I'm making sure my measurement's right, because I can basically do the math and add 4 1/4 plus 1/4 inch and then move on, and that's what I did here. So I was at, I think it was 9 1/4, something like that when I was done. So you just add your 4 and then another 1/4, and that gets you right there. So then all I do is I just get that edge right up against the fence, and then I'll come down here and I'll get that pencil line lined up just on the edge of the saw tooth right there, or the blade tooth, and that way I'll have a nice crisp line right along that 4 1/4 mark. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't going to be some fine piece of furniture or anything fancy. This is just a little organization tool for the wife to make her job a little bit easier instead of using a milk crate to do these gift cards. So now that I got the blade lined up, I got it all locked into place, it's not moving. All I'll do is I'll flip this board over, run it through, and then as you saw in the time lapse, I'd run the next one through. And the big thing with doing stuff like this is you want to make sure that you're cutting these all kind of with the same position. And since these are opposite sides, you can't have them both, like I couldn't cut them both like this. Hang on, like this. So I won't want to run them through a saw like this because as you can see, the slots wouldn't line up. So I have to have one of them flipped the other way. That way when I run them through the saw, they'll mirror each other, because that way, like this is the bottom side here. So we get that set. And this one set. See if they'll stand on their own. Perfect. So they're not perfectly lined up, but you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So the next cut will be right here, and I want to make sure that these slots line up, so that way when I'm putting this together, it's the same with the other sides, that when I'm putting that divider through it, it's going to meet with the other half, versus if I were to do it this way, none of these would line up. And so that's not good. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that these are lining up on both ends. And so that's why when I cut them through, this one will go, basically I'll lay this one this way and this one this way, and that way the grooves are lined up on the edges here, and then when I cut this one, they'll be all lined up, so that way when I flip them back up and make the actual box, everything will be lined up, so it'll be easy to drop those dividers in, and I won't have any issues with that. So I'm gonna go ahead, cut the last bit of grooves in here, and then I already got the bases cut, so what I'll do is finish the grooves on this guy, and then I'll tack these together to get the box frame done, and then I'll go and I'll kind of cut to fit all the dividers, get them all fit length and height wise, so that way they're good there, and then I'll mark on the dividers where I need to notch them back, because like I said earlier, we're going to notch them back halfway so they'll nest together. So one will go this way, one will go this way, and the half kind of cutout will make them so they slide together and they'll fit perfect. So I'll go back, cut these, get the box made, and then I'll come back when I'm notching out the dividers. All right, so we got our bin together, and we got all of our little slats adjusted or cut to fit in here. So I've already got one started. Makes it a little bit easier if you get one going. And then we want to make sure we're putting these all in the right direction. So the kind of taller end, that's this guy up here, the bigger cubby for the top is up here, and we just kind of fiddle these in, and once they get pretty close to lined up, it should all kind of fall together. So I'll kind of hold you guys like so, and boom, drops in, and then this last one should go in pretty easy, just because the other ones are in, so there's not as much wiggle room. Boom. So now these are all in, so you can kind of see what's going on here. And then all I really have to do is cut this divider and this divider down so I can get the bigger cubby, the two big cubbies on top. I did cut the grooves there. It's not a big deal. Like I said, this isn't a fine furniture piece or anything fancy. It's just a quick little divider for the wife so she can use it for her gift card stuff. So basically all I got to do now is set this inside here like a so, and then what I'll do, since I got to cut these center dividers out, what I'll probably do is put the long dividers in, just because those ones are going to be the hardest. They're easier to flex back and forth versus the little dividers. So trying to flex these back and forth to get the big ones to fit is going to be harder to do than if I do these ones, because these ones, it flex a little bit more, so it'll be easier to do it that way. And yeah, so I'll cut these down and then put everything in here, and then we're pretty much done, and then I'll just come through with the hand sander and round off all these corners, and that's it. The wife said she doesn't want any stain on this, so it is what it is. And then yeah, I'll just blow it off, get all the sawdust off, and then it's good to go. Alright, so we got the two end ones that are going down here. I got them trimmed. I trimmed them back just a touch past the opening here. That way when I put them in, this will probably flex a little bit, so I won't have like a little ridge here. And I'm not going to glue these or anything. They're just going to be kind of just snug fit inside here. So now all I'm doing is just kind of flexing these back and forth, getting them to all kind of line up as best I can. And I want to get the center one in just because this one goes all the way to the front. And I bet you it's that guy right there. And once you get this one in, it should be kind of smooth sailing, so there. And then these ones should go in a little bit easier because I don't have to really fight with as much stuff. Boom. And you can see I've got some pencil marks on some of this stuff, and yeah, so that's basically the cubby system right there. you can kind of notice this cubby is a little bit smaller than the rest of them. When I was measuring the perimeter, I forgot to add, what was it, a 1/2 inch, I think it was, to the outside diameter. So on my drawing here, I have it where it says 17 3/4, or actually an inch, sorry. So this is supposed to be 18 3/4. So this last cubby ended up being, it's like almost exactly an inch smaller than the rest of them. So like this cubby, it's a little bit over, around 4 1/4, and this one's 3 1/4. So I'm not sure where or how I missed it, but it is what it is. I don't think it'll be too big of an issue. She'll just have to kind of work with it. I think the cards will still fit in. Yeah, they'll still fit in sideways, so it's not the end of the world. I mean, she might end up putting them that way anyways. My intentions were to have them put in that way. That way she can kind of just reach in and grab them out. But if she puts them in this way, they still fit the same. They all sit all the way in. And then the bigger cards, those fit. And then this is just a box. So the box is a little bit bigger, but then the envelopes will fit up there. If I grab these cards here. Give me 1 second. There we go. So it's basically kind of like that, but then all these will be full. And then however she organizes it, probably $25 gift cards all along this row, $50 gift cards, 75, and then 125. And that way, all she has to do to get one is she just reaches in like this, pulls it out, and then when she's making them, she can make a batch of them, and then just stuff them all in there. And then she knows by color, or however she organizes it, which are which. I think she has a few of them that have like this black on it, so she'll have to kind of figure out her own system on where each restaurant's cards go. But for the most part, this is done. All I gotta do now is just touch up the edges here, round them off, including the outside corners here. That way it's not gonna chip out on her when she's using it. And then yeah, just bring it to the house, and then when she comes home from work, she can have this set up. And I think I might even set it up for her, because I got the cards in the house right now, so I can get this all set up for her, so that way when she comes home she has at least that to look forward to. And this will be the end of this video. I'll throw a picture, or not a picture. Yeah, we'll just call that it.